This is my first ride on the Varun M26 version 3. Hill in front of me. I'm going to talk about the specs in this video and pretty much everything you should know. Now I have to say, it's probably one of the strangest looking bikes I've ever had on the channel. But let's see what it's all about. Coming up a hill here, we're on gear 3, which is the highest gear, and I am pedaling the bike. And of course, it's actually going up the hill really well. Surprisingly, the torque from this 500 motor is actually very decent. And straight away, I noticed, of course, this suspension on this bike, the front suspension in particular, gives really nice cushioning going over bumps. And it does have, of course, 26-inch wheels as well that have an amazing tread. So comfortability factor, plus you have these really wide handlebars. Comfortability factor is actually quite impressive on this so far. We'll do a top speed test now, acceleration only, in a second. But of course, one thing that's really weird for me is that the left brake on this is actually for your front. So normally the right brake is for the front, so that's kind of something that you kind of have to get used to. So we'll do a top speed test on gear 1. Let's go, acceleration only. Gear 1 gets you 14 kilometers, 14.9. Okay, so we're at basically 15 kilometers per hour on gear 1, acceleration only. Let me see, actually, if you pedal, can you actually get past this speed? You should be able to. Yes, so I'm pedaling here. So you can actually, of course, increase the speed. So it's not basically limited like some e-bikes. Some e-bikes have a cut-off, so if the top speed is like 20 kilometers per hour, even the faster you pedal, it doesn't go past that speed, whereas that's not the case on the Varun. Definitely stick around for the video. This bike has some features that some people may actually find very useful. It is customizable in a way as well. Okay, let's do top speed test. Acceleration only. Initial torque, actually quite good on this. Okay, so top speed on gear 2, acceleration only. It's actually still climbing, so we're at 21 kilometers an hour, 21.5. Okay, so top speed, yeah, around 21 kilometers an hour, give or take. Again, let's take my hand off the throttle, pedal, speed increases slightly. Okay, so let's go on to gear 3. Much better torque on gear 3. This will be the gear that you use on climbing hills, which this bike actually shouldn't have a problem with once they're not too crazy. Top speed on gear 3 with my weight. We're on my camera gear, so around 86 kilograms today, maybe actually 87, 88 kilograms. Top speed acceleration only is actually 26 kilometers per hour. Let me see if we pedal. Let's put it on to Shimano gear number 7. Speed is still around the same. Okay, so speed is staying around 27 kilometers an hour almost, which is more than acceptable. It does have a 48 volt, 7.5 amp hour battery that, if you take a look, is actually at the front of this e-bike. Now I'm going to open this, explain this in a bit more detail in a few minutes, but I have to say, even if you don't use the accelerator, and let's just say you start pedaling, the torque, the initial torque that it gives you is actually quite good. This bike has a range of up to 120 kilometers, they claim. In reality, that's how if you're going the lower gear, and of course if you were pedaling mostly. So of course the faster you go, the faster the battery drains. But even the brakes on this bike, if you just take a look, whoa, brakes are actually really good on this. And again, suspension is brilliant. It's basically a mountain bike adopted into an e-bike, but with that comes actually a few good things. You have, of course, your bell here. You have like a standard LCD display here, displays your speed, gears. It doesn't display the voltage, but it does actually have it in increments in bars on the battery symbol. So I always like a voltage being displayed, but you can't do nothing about that. Let me just double check. Okay, actually, hang on. It can give you your average speed, and it can give you your mileage, trip. Yeah, so it doesn't give you your voltage, but never mind. As well, a good thing is the handlebars on this are actually, you can have them tilted more towards your chest, or you can actually have them even down more, so you can have more of a kind of flat riding style, which some people prefer. I have them up at this height, which I do prefer. Plus the saddle is height adjustable, so for any heights it should suit, but do keep in mind it is 26-inch wheels, so the bike is quite high. Again, I'm going to show you that in a minute, the actual height of this bike. But even the size of this bike, it's actually foldable. One funny thing actually about this bike is that the handlebars actually are completely go around at 360 degrees. I prefer them to kind of have a locking point, but they don't on this. Of course, it's foldable here, and the kickstand is actually really good on this. But the bike does have a good tilt to it, but it's more than acceptable, to be honest. Well, this bike is kind of weird, but weird in a good way. So this was sent to me to review by Varun, and I have to say, when I did actually have a look at this, I said, God, that bike is kind of strange looking, weird spec. How do you assemble the bike? All these questions that are actually running through my head initially, but I kind of like it. And there's a number of reasons why this M26 3 model, which is their latest version, kind of stands out actually, funny enough, from other bikes that I've had on the channel. So briefly, let's just run through the specs. You have a 48 volt 7.5 amp hour battery that's actually in this front compartment. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That's actually kind of probably the weirdest thing about this. And also we have a top speed of up to 32 kilometers an hour, but for me I got 27. The bike actually weighs 30 kilograms, which actually isn't too bad. It has, of course, the front suspension here, and it has the midpoint suspension. It does have these 26-inch, basically they're like an all-terrain tyre. They actually give really good grip. You also get a front LED light with this. You don't get a rear one, but of course you can buy them separate. And the bike is foldable, and it does have 7 Shimano gears. But when I took this out of the box, I didn't realise actually that you do need to assemble a few things on this bike, but it's also customizable depending on the region you're in. So basically, this is of course where your controller is. You have the suspension here, it folds here. Pedals are not collapsible, but I mean that's not really a deal breaker for this kind of bike. Gears are okay, but the gears could be fine tuned a little bit better from factory. That's my only kind of major complaint. Not a lot of noise is actually coming from this bike, which is quite good, and it is a little bit difficult to bottom out the suspension, but if you do go crazy you will end up doing that, particularly if you're doing off-road trails, something like that. On the rear here you do have a 500 watt motor, and surprisingly enough, as you go through the gears, of course you get more torque, but the torque alone from that motor is actually quite good compared to some 500 watt electric scooters that I've had on the channel. So from hill climbing, it's actually quite good at hills, and of course you can pedal the bike as well. Of course you could get a range of up to 80 kilometers, maybe 120. That's realistically only if you're going like on gear 1 and if you are pedaling the bike at the highest gear. But to be honest, I'd say if you were going as fast as possible with a 48 volt 7.5 amp hour battery, you know, you probably could get maybe 20-25 kilometer hour max if you were going crazy with the bike. Faster you go, the faster the battery drains. I get asked that question all the time on the channel. That's just the way it is, same as a car. But before I show you some of the kind of weird things about this, you do get standard mechanical disc brakes in the front and of course in the rear. So yeah, the brakes are actually quite decent on this. The left brake is the front brake and the right hand side brake is the rear brake. Normally it's the opposite way around in general for the bikes that I've had on the channel. So that's one thing that I don't like. I wish they were the opposite way around. You could switch them if you want, but for me I wouldn't actually go through the hassle. So when you take this out of the box, this twist throttle and this grip are actually separated. In some countries, in Europe for example, you are not allowed throttles on an e-bike. And when I did get this bike, you didn't have that. You just have kind of basically pedal assistance. But the good thing is, if you are in a country where it allows throttles on e-bikes, you simply install it, you take off the grip that already comes with basically from factory, and then you pop this twist throttle on. You have a small spacer in between, and then you pop the rest of the grip on. Then you just simply connect the throttle basically to the connector that's in the bag here. Now let's talk about this. Very strange. This is of course where the battery is. Now I'm going to talk about a few concerns in a second, but just take a look here. Normally on e-bikes you have, of course, the battery that's in basically the frame, but this is the battery here. 7.5 amp hour battery, which is 48 volts as well. Now there's a few concerns about this. For example, if it rains, I've had bags in the past that claim to be waterproof but they're not, or a high water resistance rating. Generally those bags get damp inside, so if it rains I'm quite concerned about this battery getting damaged. It is IP65 rated. To be honest, it's that for me is makes me a little bit nervous. I'd rather basically put this battery that's in this bag already into another bag, a bigger bag like a Wildman 3 litre bag, or you can get them I think in 4 or 5 litre. Then put basically this bag in that bag, so you kind of have double the protection from waterproof. You do of course have your connectors here. This is the connector from basically the battery here to the all your cables here. Cable management on this scooter is very messy. I don't like cable management like this. The controller is there. I mean, the controller is quite exposed in my opinion, so I think you would just have to be cautious basically in rain. You can turn off the battery. Now I'm not saying the battery is badly built, it is in quite a good case. You do have your on off button here, so in a way they say on the website it's like anti-theft. So let's say you have to go to work, you can simply take out the battery in a matter of seconds and charge it, and your charging connector is here. In a way it's good because you can do that very fast. In a way against rain you would have to be very careful, so just put this bag in another bag basically, that's what I'm saying. Overall though, build quality is quite decent because the bike, if you just take a look at it, if it didn't have that battery at the front, it looks like a normal mountain bike. I mean, of course it does not look electric at all in my opinion, so the likes of thieves, something like this would probably just leave it alone. So I think, you know, okay, that's probably the strangest point about it. Overall though, it's very comfortable, solid, tires are fantastic. Mudguards are a little bit flimsy at the back there, to be honest. You can always buy after better mudguards that are a bit more solid, but overall bike is quite sturdy and very comfortable to ride. So let's just recap on what I like about the bike. Tires are good, speed is decent, very comfortable overall. Front suspension is good, rear point suspension is good, saddle is very comfortable on this. Nice height. I think if you're kind of a smaller person, like let's say you're like 5 foot for example, you will of course find it tricky getting on the bike because it is actually quite high. I'm like 5'9" for reference, so you do kind of need to keep that in mind because you have to of course throw your leg over. Other good things that I do like about the bike is I do like the twist throttle. Handlebars are a very good width on this and really good torque from the motor, and the brakes. The things that I don't like about the bike is the controller is exposed in my opinion. The battery is very exposed, so again that is a little bit of a worry there. Personally for me, I wish the battery was just built into the frame, to be honest, like a lot of other e-bikes, because it's more discreet, and most of them at this point are actually removable. They're the only things that I don't really like about the bike. So let's talk about the value and who it's for. So who is it for? Well, this bike is actually pretty much for anybody because it's kind of like a mountain bike, discreet style bike that's less likely to get stolen compared to some other e-bikes. You can do a small bit of off-roading because you have the suspension here, getting to and from work once you're not doing anything crazy, and if you don't have a lot of crazy hills in your area. That's kind of who it's targeted towards. But let's talk about the value. I'm not gonna lie, when I saw the price of this bike, I thought it would have been actually more expensive, around 800-900 euro give or take. The price it's at right now is a steal, so sometimes they do also have discounts as well, so definitely worth to check out the link in the description right now what price is that, because of course things do change over time. So overall I'm actually quite happy with the M26. If you have enjoyed this video, give it a like. By the way, if you want to see my other e-bike videos that I've done, click on the playlist that's showing up on screen right now. In the meantime, I'll talk to you in the next video.